So welcome to the Holistic Vets for Transformation Conference. I'm Dr. Jeff Grognet, and with me is Dody Tyneway Robi. And Dody is a veterinarian. And she graduated in 1992, but she's been in the veterinary field for over 40 years because she started as a kennel attendant at 13 years old. And she attended Cornell University, and then she moved on to the University of Florida, and that was where the College of Veterinary Medicine was. And after several years in practice, she found out that she wanted to learn a different way to treat her patients. And then she became certified and worked in acupuncture, herbal and homeopathic medicine, veterinary chiropractic, rehabilitation, physical therapy, natural nutrition, and food therapy. And Dr. Dody is the mother of 2 humans, 4 dogs, 3 cats, and 1 grand kitty. I don't know how that one works in there. Okay. So anyway, quite a menagerie. So welcome, Dody.
Thank you.
Okay. So your topic is going to be zeroing in on nutrition. And just as a preview for everyone who's watching, part 1 is going to be more or less what should we be feeding our putty tats? And this is a cat thing. This is not dogs in this one. And then part 2 is how can we do it? As in, Dody's going to give us some actual recipes and show us how to do that. So there's your preliminary on what's going to be happening. So the thing that all holistic vets know, nutrition is the cornerstone, the foundation. And so tell me more about that with our cat friends.
So, for me, I'd been in practice, many years. In 2007, we had the pet food recall, and it was just chaos. People were panicking and not buying commercial pet food. So they were making their own recipes without balancing them. So I started making a premix, basically with the guidance of a PhD animal nutritionist, and selling these little packets so people could balance homemade pet food at home. And it was amazing to me for many years, and you probably have seen this as well, that people would be feeding chicken and rice for like several years after that pet food recall. And I'd be like, oh gosh, folks, we gotta fix that. But along the way, just, with experience, you can just see with cats, especially, you could almost tie any issue that cats encounter health-wise to their diet. So you basically, you never correct a poor diet with medication or surgery or whatnot. I mean, there's no fix. You can't, there's no remedy for that. You have to go back to the diet and fix that first. So I just try to get across to people, look, you're going to end up with costly veterinary bills. And when I see a kitten, I will tell people, look, do not let a kibble cross their lips. Just don't do it. Because it's like Pringles to them. They're like, they eat it and they're just like we are. It's like there's a little dopamine thing that goes off in their little brain too. And it creates this whole situation where insulin comes and it sends the sugar in the cells, then their sugar drops and they get hungry again, they go back and snack. They have the same problem with metabolic syndrome as people. And so never getting started with that in the first place will save you so much money. But people are like, oh gosh, that kibble is so convenient and I can just leave it out. And I think I remember one of the veterinary endocrinologists saying to me, like, a free-fed cat is like you're going to have diabetes. Like by 8 years of age, it's like diabetes until proven otherwise. So basically, it's becoming very apparent to me the importance of nutrition. So it's really become a passion of mine, and just helping cats get better holistically. And that's just the first thing. And so my goal today is to kind of help people figure out, okay, what small change can I implement? And then, build from there. And just to understand how cats are different, than dogs. They're not small dogs. They do not tolerate taking a whole bunch of medications and supplements. So if you can feed the proper diet, you'll never be in that place to begin with. So just being proactive, getting them on the best possible diet you can, you will definitely save money by preventing disease and potential veterinary visits. Not to mention, cats are so sensitive to stress, and having to correct issues by going to the vet frequently just compounds that stress. And I really, I've never heard a person say, my cat loves going to the vet. Have you?
Actually, I did have one.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it's
Yeah.
not the owner's favorite chore, you know.
No, and the cats definitely do not appreciate that. But yeah, it's just there's a lot of talk about these emotional pillars of emotional health for cats as well. I wanted to mention that. Uh,
Mhm.
the very, I'd say 90% of cat problems can be corrected or improved with nutrition, and the other 10% can be corrected by addressing their environment and husbandry. And basically, the Association of Feline Practitioners came out with these pillars of health. Um, one being access to key resources. So obviously, food and water. You want to make sure your cats are fed in separate areas if possible. Don't,
Mhm.
don't put them all on top of each other eating their food. They need some space from each other to eat. I always said one litter box per cat, but the AAFP is now recommending one litter box plus one. So if you have
Yeah,
3 cats, you should have 4 litter boxes. But
yeah.
that can really,
I cheated on that one because at one point we had 5 cats.
yeah,
And we only had 4 boxes. But they were different areas of the house
yeah,
and they were cleaned every day.
yes,
So, and they were clumping, so you pulled out all the pee balls and the poops and everything,
yep.
and that worked. But yeah, especially when you only have 2 cats, I think that's more important to get that
Oh, yes.
extra litter box. When you've got a number of cats like the 5, then you can probably get away with a little bit more. But
Right, right.
the thought's
And
good.
so you also want to make sure they have plenty of resting spots, like, perches. I love the window perches that just, they have little suction cups and they go in the window. My cats love those. They love to sunbathe in those. But cats like to get to a safe space, and there should be plenty of those. And also scratching posts, plenty of scratching posts and places that you find them. They get up from a nap. The first thing they want to do is go and so make sure you've got that ready for them near where they wake up from their resting spot. Um, then of course there's play. They recommend 15 minutes twice a day. Obviously it's kind of awkward to say, cat, we're going to go play now, but just try to be aware, especially if you've got multiple cats. You could just set, when they come to you asking for attention, just take the opportunity to bring out the little predator in them, get them to chase something, or obviously, don't use your hands, but if you got those little cat oh, I don't know, the cat dancers and whatnot, there's all sorts of toys for cats. um and another thing is just positive interactions in the home with your cat. Routines, like if there's children in the home, that the children are respectful of the cat, that they aren't carrying a cat around that doesn't want to be carried. And just that when people come into the home, visitors and whatnot, that the cat's got some privacy and a safe place to be. And then I thought that it's interesting that they add being respectful of their sense of smell. And I think what they're saying, cats, they mark territory, they rub on,
Mhm.
you see them come around a corner and they rub they're marking that, and they say, just let that be, like, don't come and clean behind that, because that's their way of communicating and feeling safe and whatnot. But
Yeah.
it's just cats, apparently their sense of smell is very sensitive, and to respect that. And I think it also holds true for essential oils with cats. You kind of have to, before you pull out the lavender, kind of see how your cat reacts to that. It's
Yeah.
they're very sensitive.
Yeah, I've got Janet Rourke talking on this conference as well. And yeah, one of the things that she points out is that if you're going to use them around cats or dogs,
Mhm.
um, have the essential oils there and then see if whether or not the pet exits the room.
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's one of your best keys right there. If they go and rub against it, like a cat might, then
Mhm.
that's a winner. That one can stay.
Yep. Exactly. So just being respectful of that because, I think dogs and cats can smell, or that sense is so much stronger than ours.
You bet.
And
It is.
but basically, just my big thing is just try not to feed dry food if at all possible. I really am opposed to that. I understand if you have a situation where you have a number of cats and it's not affordable, then at least try to feed at least 50% canned or homemade food. It's just cats have very low thirst drive, so they're just chronically dehydrated if they're eating dry food. Not to mention they're eating too many carbohydrates, and that's what leads to all of these issues that they have. So I guess there's a study that shows that if it's at least 50% canned, then those cats are less likely to have the urinary tract issues. So I would say the other thing with cats is they're like the canary in the coal mine as far as toxins and things in the environment go. All these flame retardants and things that are put on our couches and our uh, materials around us, cats groom all the time and they're ingesting those. So just keeping your environment as clean as possible from toxins and keeping that in mind. Um, and then other facets of holistic care, of course, includes not over vaccinating. I mean, literally after your kittenhood series, they're immune for life for panleukopenia and Khaleesi virus and those. And they've also found that there's some cross reactivity with one of the viruses is made in renal cells, and they believe that some of the kidney disease is related to the body having antibodies to those proteins that are present in the vaccine that come from the kidney. So, a lot of, I think the holistic veterinarians are opposed to vaccinating beyond the kittenhood series, and I think a lot of the immunologists are coming on board with that as well, and supporting
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, well, the main thing we know, very simply, is that the vaccines last we know, for 7 years in cats, with the
Mhm.
down leukopenia and the respiratory viruses. And so it's like, okay. And then the other thing, which is far more important with cats, what's their risk? I mean, so many cats are indoors or have very limited exposure to outdoors. So their risk is way, way down. You know,
Right, right, right.
so we got to
Exactly.
really decide what we're trying to protect them against in that situation.
Yeah, yep. And the other thing too is though, like if you do have a cat that is outdoors, which I only take my cats out supervised. They love going outside, and I love going outside with them and watching them watch the birds, but I just don't, it's not safe out there, in my opinion. But I do provide plenty of enrichment for my cats. But if I did have an outdoor cat, I would protect it from rabies because cats are hunters. And I know in Southern California, if they pick up a bat, there's a good chance that it's rabid if it's flopping around on the ground. And it all depends on your risks. And I know in LA County where I am, there's definitely I think 1 in 10, it may be even more than that, bats that are turned in are have rabies. And the thing is, if they're accessible to your cat, if they're sick, there's something wrong with them. So, that's a consideration that you should talk to your veterinarian about. Um, and let's see, we talked about vaccinating, but basically, kibble can be attributed, you could almost trace any problem back to diet. And one thing I remember, as a young veterinarian being told that, oh, they have to chew on kibble for their dental health. And now I know, after seeing so many cats with terrible dental disease that are eating kibble, it's like eating hard candy for them. So I mean, you wouldn't think you would eat hard candy and you would have better teeth, but certainly We all remember that those days? We thought that the
Well, I didn't get
kibble
much of that, but
was
yeah, there's,
brushing their teeth. But anyway, so dental
gotcha.
disease, obviously overweight cats with diabetes and metabolic syndrome, that is just related to too many carbohydrates. And we all know that, you know, overweight people and overweight animals are more prone to cancer due to the, you know, the
Mhm.
connection
Yep,
there.
for sure.
And all the lower urinary tract disease, bladder and kidney issues, just from the chronic dehydration, building up crystals and whatnot, even in the kidneys and the bladder, stones. Another thing is allergies. I think, you know, when pets eat adulterated, you know, GMO foods and whatnot, it's like, okay, these foods are designed to repel pests. Well, what happens when it or or kill them? I mean, when our pets eat them, it's like, what does their gut say? What is this stuff? You know, and a lot of the foods that are GMO are sprayed with more of the glyphosate and whatnot. So, you know, if you can make your own food, you can choose what goes in your pet's mouth as well as your own, obviously.
Yeah,
I think allergies are the body's just, you know, I think so many people think everything's related to, oh, my dogs or cats allergic to chicken. And it's like, no, it's just chicken is one of the usual substance, you know, one of the usual substance, what do you call them? Usual suspects. You know what I mean? It's like chicken is, if that's probably one of the most common ingredients in pet food because it's just available and
mhm,
it comes along with a
yeah,
lot of other naughty things that cause issues.
yeah. In cat food, chicken is paramount. I mean, pretty well every dry food has chicken in it.
Right.
But the same thing with canned food, and that is you start looking at the labels and you get one that's fish food and it's got, you know, fish and then it says chicken meal. It's like,
Yeah.
guys, you know, and it can be very difficult to actually find food without chicken sometimes.
Yep, that's true. And any of the fish that makes its way into pet food is definitely the dregs of fish production. Like literally it's the Chesapeake Bay, you know, it's just there you if it's in pet food and it's fish, it's probably not a healthy fish that's been fed healthy things that, you know, you want
Yeah.
to feed your pet. But and then lastly, I wanted to mention inflammatory bowel disease. And now finally they're talking more about the microbiome. Like, surprise, we've been talking about it for many years. And that cats, I mean, when was the last time you saw an intestinal biopsy come back on a cat as normal? I mean, have you ever seen one come back normal? And
Well, part of the reason that we do them is because we know there's something wrong.
yeah, there's not something wrong, but you've never seen a normal one at the same time. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, that's not my business and I don't do that, but I sometimes see records of pets that have had them done, and I have never in my career seen one come back and say it's normal. And I think it's because of what these pets are eating. And a lot of them, obviously, that are in the medical system and made their way to a biopsy are eating prescription foods too that didn't help.
yeah,
So, I mean, my whole point is the food creates an environment in the gut where the microbiome is not what it should be. Like the cat's genetically wants to see a certain microbiome and it's not seeing that microbiome. It's seeing a microbiome of a pet that's, you know, getting too many carbohydrates. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Like it's a different microbiome. So the body is like, whoa, wait a minute, what is this? So I think we're likely to see more inflammatory issues in the gut. Also constipation and hairballs. Those are like hallmarks of digestion that's just not, you shouldn't see a lot of hairballs. You shouldn't see a
mhm,
constipated cat if they're truly eating a healthy diet. And obviously aging, I think feeding or eating a whole food diet or nutritious diet, you're not going to age as much as if you were eating a processed diet. And I think we can all agree on that.
yeah. You know, I mean, the whole idea with it is the processing changes things, for one. Is they're always high in carb. The dry foods are always high in carb. The canned foods with processing as well change it. We have the sort of bad things that are being produced in there. But the main thing is it's just uh, because the diet is not suited for a cat, that's when we end up with intestinal issues. And the number one disease we get in, it's two diseases we get in cats that are just tied together like that: inflammatory bowel disease and lymphoma, which is a tumor.
Yep. And they say that's the inflammatory bowel disease is the precursor to the lymphoma.
Exactly. Yeah, the pathologist quite often can't differentiate the two.
Right.
And so it's a case of, oh, what is it? And you end up having to treat for both in a sense. But the point is that cats are an inflammatory species. They can create inflammation around anything. And because of that, if you give them the wrong food and create that inflammation, we're going to go down the road of disease. There's a lot of great information that we're looking at, and that is diet is the cornerstone. So if we want to get people moving from, I call it the conventional world into the holistic world, how do we do that?
Well, I would say, depending on where you're at, I would say the first thing is work on eliminating kibble from your cat's regimen. And you can, I'm going to give you in the first segment, you're going to get a list of transition tips and how you can do that. Go and look for the best quality wet cat food that you can. Obviously, meat should be high on the list. You're going to see some meals more than likely in there. I would avoid fish because the fish that goes into cat food tends to be high in toxins and mercury and lead and dioxins and all of that. But just avoiding processed foods. You're going to get away from the AGEs, which are these byproducts, advanced glycation end products, which are basically toxins that form when they make dry food. Between the protein and the carb in the food, they combine in the Maillard reaction, and that's really high in your dry food. So if you can even just do 50% wet, 50% dry to start, always my little guide will give you a whole bunch of tips on how to move in the right direction and avoid processed diets, which basically a lot of the nutrients that are in that food are just destroyed. So it's like if you're going to feed your cat, nourish them with something that's minimally processed or least processed as possible, and try to not violate the cat's native diet, which is a carnivorous diet. If you do that, you're going to save a boatload of money at the vet.
Yeah, and I totally on board with that, because the people that we were able to convert, and this is both dogs and cats, if we get them onto as we now call it, species appropriate diet, your vet bills go in the sewer. I mean, they just drop. And there's so many of our diseases that we're seeing these guys. It's the same in people. So many of the diseases we see are, you can call them lifestyle diseases, which means what are you eating? And then with people, it's okay, what are you exercising, doing all the other good stuff, right? But with cats, yeah, we've got to get them on that. And like you say, if they're on a dry diet, and even if you go 50% of wet, with a good quality wet, we're going to make health gains.
Yeah.
And I had a speaker at one of my other conferences that simply said, hey, give them all a piece of chicken every day. I mean, it's, raw chicken is what she was pushing. But the point is, just get them eating that, and that will improve their health. That's all it takes, right? So, but there's other ways to do that. And that's what you're going to move on to in part 2. We're going to look at how to create recipes, and Dody's got some examples on how to do that. So I want to thank you very much for coming on board with this one, Dody.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Okay. Make sure if you want to get some more information on getting them away from the dry food, click the link that I've provided below. That will get you Dody's gift, and you'll be able to then see how you can move from dry food over to something else. Some cats are a pain to switch, and I had one. I know exactly. I know exactly what it's like. Yeah, I mean, he came to me as a kibble cat, right? And finally, I fooled him. I got him on smoked salmon. And as soon as he took that, I've got you. But he was a kibble cat till the end, in the sense that if we ever had popcorn in the evening, he would jump up on the table and stretch out and pull one piece, and pull it out of the bowl and then run away with it.
So cute.
which was fun.
Yeah,
The point is, it was like, those are my carbs I'm missing, and they're addicted. There's no doubt about it.
100%.
Yeah, but he was fun at that point. But anyway, the main thing is, yeah, let's start feeding our cats right. Doty's got some great ideas here, and in part 2, we'll be going into more detail. That is in the recorded version, and so hopefully you've purchased that, and we will see you there. So welcome to Holistic Vets for Transformation Conference. I'm Dr. Jeff Grognet, and with me is Ingrid King. And Ingrid is an award-winning author of 5 cat books, including Buckley's Story, Lessons from a Feline Master Teacher, Purrs of Wisdom, Enlightenment, Feline Style, and also one called Tortitude, the Big Book of Cats with a Big Attitude. Sounds pretty neat. She also founded and published what's called The Conscious Cat, which is a website dedicated to conscious living, health, and happiness for cats and their humans. And that's been going now for about 14 years. She's continuing that work on her current website, Purrs of Wisdom. Ingrid is a former veterinary hospital manager, a certified veterinary journalist, professional member of the Cat Writers Association, and she's passionate about feline nutrition and loves helping cat parents find the best diet for lifelong health. She shares her Northern Virginia home with her 13-year-old Tortie, Allegra. So welcome, Ingrid.
Thank you.
Okay, so what we're going to be talking about today is nutrition. That is your forte. That's what you like. And so we're going to start off with this part 1 with what is the problem with commercial food? What happens with this stuff?
Boy, that's a broad question. I'm not really sure where to start.
Yeah, in 15 words or less. There you go.
I'm sorry?
In 15 words or less.
15 words or less. Whoa. There's too much of it out there and not enough good information on it. How's that?
Okay. Okay, so fill us in. What's wrong?
So I think the biggest problem with commercial pet food, cat food, but pet food in general, is that a lot of it is driven by several major companies that kind of hold a huge piece of the market, and it crowds out some of the smaller players that may have maybe better quality, more well thought out products. But it's incredibly confusing for cat parents to walk into a pet store and look at all the huge variety that's available and try to figure out, what am I supposed to feed my cat? What is the best food for my cat? So, that's why I really feel it's so important to do, the work you do with conferences like yours, to really explain what feline nutrition should be about, and then how to look for the best commercial cat food.
Mm-hmm. I totally agree, because when you go down the cat food aisle, it's just all you see is glossy packaging, and it's not really telling you what is good about the food or anything, except what the neat pictures they put on of this wonderful, chicken, and the stuff in there does not look like that chicken anymore.
Yeah, that unfortunately, pet food packaging in general is mostly about marketing, especially with cat food. Cats are obligate carnivores. That means they need to have a meat-based diet to not just thrive, but survive. So having a label with a whole bunch of veggies on there either tells me that there is too high of a vegetable content in the food, or that the manufacturer is just trying to get people to think this food is healthy, because as humans, we associate veggies with good health, but that is not the case for cats.
Yeah, you don't see a cougar digging up a carrot.
Exactly. I mean, the only vegetables really that a cat in the wild would ingest is the content of its prey. the stomach content of its prey. So, let's say cat eats a mouse, maybe 5% of that mouse is, some grass or whatever that mouse ate. And that should really be the ratio of vegetables in, a well-balanced cat food. And unfortunately, with the majority of foods out there, that is not the case.
Yeah. Well, when you think of I call it a household cat that's eating a mouse, they're going to get that little bit of intestinal contents. When you think of I'll go back to the cougar or something like that, and if they get a larger prey, they're not going to eat that much of the guts in those guys. So they're really heavy meat.
They're going to eat the meat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So knowing that we want to go with high meat diet, how do we figure that out with the foods?
Well, I think they need to understand that meat needs to be the main ingredient in a feline diet. And that means meat, not meat byproduct, not meat meal. It should be just plain chicken, plain turkey, plain whatever protein, a food contains. And that should be the first ingredient, because ingredients have to be listed on the label in the order that they're contained in the food. So the highest ingredient has to be listed first. So that should be meat.
Okay. So, but you can also get some diets that have meat as the first ingredient. And then it may have, and this is very prominent in dog foods, but I've seen it in cats too, where you have meat as the first ingredient, and the second ingredient is corn, which means there's less corn.
Yeah, but if it's the second ingredient, it's still going to be a lot of corn. So that's then get into looking at percentages, looking into protein content, looking into carbohydrate content, and especially for cats, you want carbohydrates to be on the low end, because they require protein more so than dogs, and they don't require a whole lot of a whole lot of carbohydrates.
So how would you know if the food is too high in carbs?
You're gonna make me do math now, aren't you?
No, I'm not. Sorry, Ingrid. I'm not trying to make you do math. No.
Generally, what I tell people to look for is protein content, because that's a pretty good indicator that it's reasonably balanced. In a canned food, well, that gets into a whole other area, the dry versus canned versus raw debate. But for example, in a canned cat food, protein content shouldn't be less than 9%, as it's listed on the label. Anything less tells me there's either fillers in there or there's carbs in there. Even in a grain-free food, the fillers are sometimes way too high compared to the meat. So I think that's a good starting point. That doesn't require you to whip out the calculator and add everything up and subtract from 100 to get the carb content. So I think that's probably one of the easy things to look for.
Okay. So we're looking for, so I just say canned food, we want 9% protein or more?
Or more, yeah, ideally more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about the dry food thing? Here's the question. Do you recommend feeding dry food?
No.
Okay.
I feel pretty strongly about that. Cats are just not designed to eat dry food. And yes, dry food is convenient and it's cheap. But cats evolved from desert animals, and they have a very low thirst drive. So if they're fed an exclusive dry diet, they are most likely not getting enough moisture, even if they drink water. And that is the leading cause of kidney problems, urinary tract problems. It can lead to diabetes. It can lead to a whole slew of health issues that can be completely avoided by feeding a wet diet. And it doesn't have to be raw. Even a canned diet will make a big difference. If somebody wants to use dry food as an occasional treat, I'm okay with that. But as a prime diet, a very bad idea for cats.
Yeah. Yeah, and in practice, what I saw all the time was if I saw a cat coming in and it was really fat, I could pretty well guarantee, well, you feed kibble to this guy, don't you?
Yeah, and probably free choice, like something's always left out. And yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's not monitored very well, but it's also the same as us. If we eat popcorn potato chips, like high grain, high carb foods, and that's the majority of our diet. And dry foods are generally about 50 to 60% carbs.
right.
Then our bodies are going to be changing to the heavy, fat-laden body that isn't the, as we call it, the Adonis body that I could have.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that has health consequences, as you just mentioned, the
Yes.
diabetes
Yes.
and such. And the thing I always look at is with an older cat that's fat, they get arthritis and their joints are sore. They hurt.
Yeah, I mean that's the dry food can increase inflammation markers, and it's that whole spiral that it's just a bad idea. And of course, what I hear a lot when I say that to cat parents is, oh, but it's good for their teeth, right? And it drives me crazy because it's a myth that just won't die. And sadly, it's perpetuated by a lot of conventional veterinarians. But the reality is that the scraping action of chewing the dry food that's behind that myth that is supposedly cleaning the tartar off the teeth, that's not true. And if anything, the dry food leaves a residue on teeth that encourages development of tartar. A lot of cats, if you ever watch a cat eat dry food, they don't really chew. They pretty much just pick it up and inhale it. So there goes that theory. And then, the other thing is, our pediatricians don't tell parents, oh, just have your kid chew on dry pretzels or crackers and his teeth will be fine. It just doesn't make any sense. So I don't understand why that still keeps, being perpetuated.
Well, for the part of the reason it gets still perpetuated, and this is cats and dogs, there's specific dental diets, which are dry diets that are made to, quote, keep the teeth clean. And the one, I always look at the stats that came out when the diets first got developed. So this is in dogs where they actually chew the food, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what they found is that the amount of tartar was reduced by 15%.
15.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
so I do it this way. So rather than having a centimeter of tartar, you've only got 0.85 centimeters.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so marginal. The benefit
Right.
of food
Right.
is not really very good. Now, the thing they've made the same food for cats. There's one called TD, the original.
Yeah.
And I mean, certainly I've seen cats that are on that food, and if they're tartar collectors, they still collect tartar because they don't chew it. They might.
Yeah, and even though that diet had larger pieces of kibble, I still, used to see cats inhale those pieces when I still worked in veterinary clinics because they just won't chew. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
they don't reliably chew. So yeah, so they're
yeah,
not there. But if you give them a chicken wing, then
right.
you hold it and let them chew on it, they can really get their teeth into it and really clean up their teeth.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
I will say that's a bit of a leap for a lot of people, even people who feed raw. And yes, ideally, that's a great way to keep teeth clean. But I encourage people to try brushing their cat's teeth, and it's if you start them early, it's not that hard to do, and that really makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. Cats are not, compared to people and dogs, they're not the tartar collectors that we are.
Right.
Which is great. But the point is that their teeth generally stay clean unless there's already a problem with the tooth.
Yeah.
And so but anyway, definitely saying
Yeah.
that dry food keeps them clean does not work at all.
Right. Right.
Definitely not. Yeah, but the other side is that if we're trying to, upgrade the food, what are we trying to look for in terms of better food for cats?
We're trying to look at good quality ingredients, and of course that is excuse me, that is difficult to assess for a consumer. But I think that's, where cat parents have to do their own research, looking for human grade meats, looking for again, it goes back to protein, looking for meat being the first ingredient, looking for no or very few fillers, looking for, decent moisture content if it's canned food. It, there's just so much out there that it's very difficult for the average cat parent to assess quality. One of the things I offer on my website is a list of brands that, excuse me, that I recommend. It's not exclusive by any means, but those are brands that I've either fed myself or done a lot of research on. So, that's a little bit of a starting point. But it really comes down to education, looking at, a website for a specific food. And if it doesn't make sense, ask questions. All these companies have customer service departments, but it shouldn't be that much work. But unfortunately, sometimes it is.
Yeah. Well, when you say that you don't want a food with fillers, then we're keeping on canned food at this point because
Yeah.
we've thrown out the dry
We
food.
said forget about dry, right?
So we're looking at canned food and you're seeing meat as the first ingredient. What do you mean by filler?
I don't want to see things like pea protein, because it's protein, but it's not the kind of protein that a cat can metabolize. I don't want to see anything like cellulose, or there are other cheaper fillers. I really don't want to see any grains. I don't want to see rice. I don't want to see barley, because those are carbohydrates and cats just don't need them. So that's really what I mean by fillers. I mean, certainly corn, absolutely not. Corn is known to be one of the top allergens, so we don't want to see that in a food. So that's really what I'm talking about when I'm saying fillers. And it comes down to money. I mean, meat is more expensive than grains and more expensive than, some of these other pea proteins and whatnot that some companies are now using to bump up the protein content, but still not use a lot of meat.
Yeah. So when we're looking at the meat, like you say, we can have human grade meat where it will say at the very beginning of the label, it'll say beef, venison, chicken, or something like that. What's the difference between that and then getting into chicken meal or byproducts?
That's it's a little controversial. Some people say it's just as good as real chicken. Chicken meal is just as good as real chicken as far as quality. I don't buy that. It's again, it comes down to money. Chicken meal is cheaper than chicken, so I don't think that's a good substitute for the real thing.
Well, the thing I look at is whenever people are trying to figure this one out, and chicken is a really good example because they have chicken meat, chicken meal, and chicken byproducts, right? And chicken, we actually know what that is.
Right.
Chicken meal, what that is they've taken all their residue from the chicken, so it's all the bones, all the organs that they couldn't use. It can contain feathers, but the point is, it's everything that you wouldn't want to eat. But the kicker is this: they also process that. They heat it up, they get it cooked completely, then they grind it up and dry it, and then that dry product is used as to put into the food. And then chicken byproducts is similar, except it thankfully hasn't gone through the processing thing, but it's still the garbage products. It's the stuff, the stuff you and I would not eat. but cats are forced to, because that is part of what this is. It's all ground up. You can't, when you look at a canned cat food, you can't tell what that is.
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a big difference in quality of ingredients between the chicken and then the other two guys.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I read that one really hit home for me with fish meal, because fish meal, what they do is they will cook it and they will get all the oil off, which they save as, salmon oil or deep sea oil, but then they're left with this stuff that doesn't have oil in it anymore. And that's the salmon meal or the fish meal, and that's what goes into the food. And ironically, people look at it and go, "Oh, good, salmon in there. That's got good oil."
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And no, they haven't actually, and you see it on the label. They've got to add it in at the end,
Yeah. Right.
right?
Right.
Yeah. So meal isn't a very good substitute in my mind, even though it's pushed
No.
as a high protein addition.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of ugly that way. Yeah. So what else with the foods? What else do you want to bring up with that?
As far as proteins, there is just so much out there right now, and I think there's a whole lot of exotic proteins available now, and that they have their place. But I generally tell people to start out with poultry, and and go from there. It probably is the closest it comes to a cat in the wild taking down a bird. Not that a cat would take down a chicken or a turkey, but it's it's a little bit closer than beef or lamb or something like that. That's not to say that these proteins don't have their place, but as a starting point, I think turkey and chicken seem to be well accepted by most cats, so I think that's a good starting point. I don't recommend fish except as an occasional treat, because fish comes with a whole set of problems, such as mercury contamination. The fish used in most pet food is whitefish, which is, I always get this confused. It's it's high on the food chain. So it eats all the other crap that shouldn't really be in a fish that you eat. Tuna is one of the worst ones in that respect. In fact, I think it's the FDA even warns pregnant women not to eat tuna. So I'm thinking, wow, it's probably not a good idea for tiny little cats to eat that. And also, fish has the potential for cats to sort of get addicted to it, and then they don't want to eat anything else. So it's definitely something that I recommend as just an occasional treat.
Yeah. Yeah. The problem with cats is that if you give them a little bit of tuna and they like it, then you will be saying, "Hey, they like tuna. I'm going to keep giving it to them."
Right.
So with people, like say that they even suggest with salmon, you should have it twice a week at the most, because of
Yeah.
the heavy metal concern.
Yeah. Right. Right.
And so, yeah, we want to try the same with cats. So we covered a little bit on the protein, the different proteins, getting into heavy metal contamination, and definitely we've gone right away from dry food. We don't want to touch that stuff. It's ugly. And so what we'll do then next in part 2 is we'll move on to what's the ideal diet for cats. If you want to find more about Ingrid, I've got her website below, so definitely click on that and you can find out all the good information she has on feeding cats. But in part 2, we're going to go into, like I say, how to feed a cat for optimal health. So I want to thank you very much for coming on board, Ingrid.
My pleasure.
Yeah, this is great information. And the thing about cats is it is easy just to get stuff out of the dry food bag, put it in the bowl, but we're not doing any favors for our friends.
Exactly.
Okay, so hopefully we'll see you in part 2. Part 2 is the recorded version, so yes, you do have to purchase it. But if you do that, you're going to get all the speakers, all the part 2s. So hopefully we'll see you there. And that way we can take better care of our kitty cats.